Welcome to another episode of the Bhandwagon Podcast. And today is a guest of someone I've always been kind of tracking, to be honest. Just sounded really different, especially when giving his opinions on radio or anything that he gets kind of tasked with. And quite rightly getting the what I would say the trajectory that's deserved on the BBC Asian network, and as fast becoming one of the leading lights on the radio station himself. So Haroon, Rashid, welcome to the Bhandwagon Podcast.
Ricky, thanks so much. That was a really nice intro as well. So thank you.
Yeah, I didn't even rehearse that, so that was pretty natural.
Good, you did well for one take. That was very good.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that's a big compliment. So Haroon, like, what's up with yourself? What are you up to at the moment?
So I am right now in a very exciting phase because I have just finished a job that not many people know that I was doing ahead of starting my brand new show on the Asian network. So people know me mostly as a presenter on the Asian network. They know me as the entertainment reporter on the Asian network. But I also have like a full-time job, or had a full-time job at the station behind the scenes as a news editor as well. So I've just finished that job and on a little bit of a break before I start my new show.
And like from a customer point of view, from a citizen point of view, we don't necessarily kind of see those mechanisms around back of at the back of a show. We always just see the kind of finished product within there. In your opinion, what do you prefer? You always see kind of stars, you're in, obviously we'll get to there, but you always see kind of actors going from front of the camera and absolutely gasping to get behind the camera. Is that a similar feeling for you?
Do you know what? It's really interesting because there's pros and cons to both situations. So I actually started my career in radio behind the scenes as a freelance producer, assistant producer, and then kind of climbed the ranks. And so I've seen both sides, being a presenter and being behind the scenes. I think when you're behind the scenes, you have a lot more control over things. Like you are essentially putting together you're putting together the structure of what a presenter is actually going to deliver at the end of the day, and you have a lot more creative input. You can be part of decision making and working out what's going to be on today's news agenda, or what songs you're going to play, or what features you're going to do. And your job as a presenter is to sell that, whatever that content is, in the most convincing way possible. So I enjoy both. I'm a little bit scared, I'll be honest with you, Ricky. I'm a little bit scared at this point because I'm giving up all control that I had behind the scenes to go full-fledged as just a presenter, as just being the face of the show. So that's a little bit of a scary prospect. But yeah, I enjoy both very much.
I'm guessing then you'll be probably cautious of that relationship between presenter and producer, or the team behind there, and almost try to allow them the space of the creativity point of view as well. Otherwise, you could be the what I would say kind of the parent, always teaching the kids, and you're never letting the kid make their own mistakes or development.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting.
I don't want to add to your pressure.
No, that's okay. Because I think back to when I started in radio, and I think back to the fact that when I was a producer or an assistant producer, actually, when I was an assistant producer, I think I was at my creative best. I think if you are in the right broadcasting environment, if you have the right presenter, you have the right producer, you have the right editor, you have a very safe, secure setup to be able to thrive in, then I think you can be your creative best. You want people around you who aren't going to shoot your ideas down, where no idea is a bad idea, where you can be ambitious, you can think outside of the box. And I want my producers and my team to be able to do that just the way I was able to do that a few years back. So I'm not cautious. I wouldn't say I'm cautious of that presenter producer relationship. It's a very interesting relationship because you both have very distinct responsibilities in that, and yet you want to work together. You want to fuse together and make the best of each other's ideas.
It's like two religions in one house of God.
Yeah. Because as a presenter, you're not thinking about the technicals of things. You're not thinking about the logistics of how you're going to execute something. You're just thinking of fun ideas. And really, your team are there to help enable you bring those ideas to life, or tell you, look, this isn't going to work because of XYZ reasons. Let's scale it back a little bit, or let's come at it from a different angle. And so there's always a risk that you could be at loggerheads with your producer, because you'd be like, well, I want to do this, why won't you let me do this? But actually, you have to trust their instinct as program makers, as professionals, that there's a reason they're saying what they're saying as well.
I mean, I'm just coming at it from things that I've experienced over the radio when listening to like Chris Moores, for example, where the production team actually kind of were at loggerheads with himself, Comedy Dave, and Chris Moores.
Yeah.
And the producers and the production team were allowed to have off days because they're not the face.
Yeah.
But the presenter, no matter what kind of difficulty they're going for, they still have to be 100 miles per hour, smiley face. How, like, is that something that you kind of think about, that you're not allowed to have an off day because you're responsible for all your listeners in being in the best mood possible?
Yeah, Ricky, it's so interesting. Like, the fact that we're having this conversation right now in this period before I start this new job, these are all ideas that have been going through, or thoughts that have been going through my mind. Because you're right, as a presenter, you are paid to be in a good mood all the time. Like, you can't have an off day, because if you have an off day, why would anybody want to listen to you on the radio, right? They're going to switch that off. Somebody who's already having a bad day and is tuning into the radio for a little bit of escapism. If I, as a presenter, am also in a bad mood, what is the point of them tuning in? So I think what I see radio as is, I see it as the most authentic form of performance. Like, you are performing on the radio. When that microphone goes up, you are putting your best foot forward. You are making sure that you are entertaining, you are positive, you are, glasses half full. You are that ever optimist on the radio, and yet you're being authentic at the same time. You're staying true to who you are at the same time. You're not lying. Everything that I talk about on the radio is an authentic extension of my personality. But yes, am I aware that I have to deliver it in a manner that will make people happy? Yes, definitely. And I think that is a hard balance to strike. And I mean, there's some presenters who do it very, very well, and there's some presenters who actually play up to their bad days, right? Like Chris Moores is a good example of when he was in a bad mood, you'd know about it on the radio, but they'd make something out of it. They'd make some sort of feature out of it, or some sort of sketch out of it. So there are presenters who do that as well. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's my style, but they're very successful at doing that.
Yeah, I was just trying to envisage myself, as you just mentioned, Chris Moores, and like how they played the characters. Like, I always get it when I do two versions of this podcast. I do the normal podcast, and then sometimes if a guest let me down or anything like that, I do like a jump off playlist where it's just me into a camera. And the amount of phone calls that I get after that is like, "Are you okay? Is everything all right?" Because all I'm doing is constantly moaning. It's just like, that's the persona, that's the venting kind of space. But I think that's important though, because when you've got somebody to kind of bounce off, it really makes the whole kind of the vibe of the show really good. And so having that kind of choice of people is very important.
Yeah, but again, that's another thing that's changed, right? Because I think so you're talking about Chris Moores when he was on Radio 1, aren't you? So we're talking here like over 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think people's listening has changed since then as well. So
I was going to get to this as well, but it's good that you raise it now.
Yeah, because I think 10 years ago, when you had personalities like Chris Moores on Radio 1, or even more recently than then, there is an expectation that radio presenters are performative, that they are positive, that they are all inclusive, all those things. But if you are being authentic to yourself, then you are going to moan about certain things. There are things that are going to upset you. There are things that are going to get on your nerves. And I think being a radio presenter, one of the arts of being a radio presenter is being able to convey those things as well, without being a switch off moment, without forcing a listener to be like, oh man, all this guy does is moan, or all this guy does is complain, and switch over to another radio station. So I think you can have those moments where you're saying things that that are not making you happy, but it's how you do them, how you come back to the positivity as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably that was the kind of launch of Talk Sport in my journey, where it was like I didn't hear any ads, and it was literally just people like, when you. I think if you're in a position where you're shouting at the radio presenter with a different view, you've done your job in some
Yeah,
way, because there's that engagement that they're more likely to pick up the phone and text in or just say something, because you've captured them at that same bit. I also think there's a bit of a risk if everything's too happy, nicey Disneyland kind of effect as well. And I think getting that, I think the skill of having different debates, and especially with the kind of shows that you've been on and the kind of work where you've been in. So your work experiences when you first got into BBC, and then you've actually progressed up the ladder in an old traditional, old-fashioned kind of way. Like, you haven't got in there because someone who's a music person and they put pressure on on management or something like that, or there's bias and getting in there. I think you've done it. I think you've got more. I always find that you've actually got more ear to the ground of your audience than more than a lot of presenters in that way. Because you can know people personally as well. You think, hang on, you're not like this at all. It's pure fake. It's not authentic. Authentic.
yeah. I mean, I think it's so. I work for the Asian network, and so my audience is predominantly a South Asian audience,
Yeah.
and I have lived and breathed and consumed this world since I was a child. Like this South Asian entertainment industry, the British Asian scene, I've consumed this since I was a kid. I remember, getting my first iPod and just filling it with Juggy D and Jay Sean and Raghav and all that good music that was coming out in the mid 2000s. And I remember living in an area in Northamptonshire where I couldn't share my love of those things openly because there wasn't enough of a community. And what the Asian Network did for me was create or provide a safe space where I all of a sudden started hearing presenters talking about the music that I cared about in with as much passion as I cared about it.
Mm.
And so even now when I'm on the radio and I'm talking about certain songs or certain movies or certain things going on, I know that there will be somebody listening in quite a rural area with not many South Asian people there, and they will feel a sense of connection to what I'm talking about. And so for me, it is really important to stay authentic and to stay true to what I like and what I'm interested in, and hope that I can be that safe space for another person like the Asian Network was for me as a teenager. That's really what I hope for.
I mean, you just touched on it. Your early part of your life in terms of. I mean, how it sounds like it was a difficult balance, really. Of I don't know, probably. I'm guessing that it was difficult that you weren't that many kind of South Asian families in your area of there. And what was a young Haroon like dealing with that?
So for me, it was weird because I went from living in West London. So I was born and raised in West London in Hayes, in West Drayton, very Asian area. Well, West Drayton not so much, but Hayes, very Asian area, literally on the border of Southall. And so up until I was like 11, my world was quite South Asian. Friends at school were South Asian. Um, my family, my extended family was all there. You go onto Southall Broadway, you wouldn't know that there's a world outside of this where there aren't brown people. And so when my family moved to Northamptonshire, when I started secondary school, that was a bit of a culture shock. Like going into an area where there weren't Asian people was a bit of a culture shock. Um, and so for me, it definitely created some sort of, I guess, identity crisis within myself because I couldn't relate to the people around me. And there was like a small South Asian community there, but they'd already adapted to the balance, you could say, that was required in that area, right? There was a very kind of Asian part of the town center. There was in the kind of school playground, there was a group of Asian kids in one corner, but I didn't have anything in common with them either. So it was a bit of a strange kind of um, setup, and so I kind of found my identity through entertainment. Like I said, through films, music, pop culture that made me feel connected to where I'd initially grown up in West London, or a part of my culture that I was missing. I remember when I first started getting pocket money when I was like 12, 13, we would come down to West London pretty much every weekend because we had family here. But I just go to South of Broadway and buy like Bollywood CDs or British Asian CDs, and that's all I'd want to do, because during the week that would almost keep me going with a connection of my culture. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but that was kind of a little insight into my upbringing.
Yeah, I mean it's quite similar when you see people going in towards the arts, but when you have it's people guess when I have from that background of where they got their learning from. It was a sense of not fitting in and trying to fit in and trying to work out and having that relationship with their heritage, and how they got that really kind of defines their way of where they are later on in life in terms of persistence of the people have been shipping over CDs or albums, when especially for kind of like music producers and stuff. And it really kind of demonstrates a lot for people in terms of where they get their preferences and their biases or anything like that. When did you kind of establish an early point that let's say Bollywood was the particular bit for you?
Do you know? So it's interesting because I don't think Bollywood has ever been the only area that I'm interested in. But
Is what you're known for.
yeah, it's what I'm known for. But like I remember when I was younger, I used to consume a lot of pop music or R&B music in the same manner that I was consuming Bollywood as well. I used to have like 50 Cent CDs, Justin Timberlake CDs, Timberland. Like I used to be consuming mainstream pop music as much as I was consuming South Asian music. But obviously, then I made a career in out of this, so that's a little bit different. But I always knew that I appreciated Bollywood from a young age because it was encouraged in my home as well. Like, my mum and dad used to have cassettes, and my dad used to have vinyls, and, we used to have CDs of Bollywood soundtracks. So I always knew it was something that I was inclined towards. Like my earliest memory in life is going to watch Hum Aapke Hain Kaun in a cinema. So I always knew that it was, I love the kind of larger than life scale of it. I love like the fantasy of it. I love the song and dance of it. It's everything that's so unrealistic, and it just is exactly what it claims to be, which is escapism for the audience, right? And I mean, I say this a lot now, and I joke about it, about how it's cold and wet and rainy in the UK, but maybe that's part of the reason I love Bollywood so much, is because it is a million miles away from our reality.
Yeah, and even when they do the snow scenes, it's always hot there. There's always blue sky in it, you know what I mean? But like,
they don't feel cold, do they? When they have snow scenes, they don't feel cold. They're running around in like saris and shorts and t-shirts. They don't feel it.
I think what eases their pain is sometimes their bank balance when they do it. But it's interesting about the word escapism that we've mentioned it a few times, and then that you're buying the music to kind of get through the week. That was your escapism again, and then it's almost epitomized by Bollywood in some way. So how did you know that the radio or the arts in that way was going to be your future?
I didn't. I actually wanted to be a film director. So when I was a teenager, I think my initial thought was that I wanted to be a film director, and so I pursued subjects at school that were going to help me with that. So I did media studies, GCSE. I did, I think I did, film or media A level. I actually can't remember now. I think I did film A level, if I'm not wrong, and drama A level, and I did these subjects because I thought it would help me in a career in cinema in some form. And then I'd already started listening to the Asian Network by that point. Again, I stumbled across the Asian Network. It wasn't something that I actively like seeked out. I remember just turning the radio on in the car at one point and hearing Asian music, and then that just became a frequency that stayed on in the car. I think it was.
Did you get it? Was it 1458 or 83 whatever?
837. Yeah, 837 is what it was. Because Northamptonshire is in that really interesting place. 1458 is like a cross between Sunrise Radio and BBC Asian Network in the Midlands.
So if ever you're going down, if ever you were traveling down to London,
we'd
always we would hear Asian, and then as soon as it's all right, turn it off. Forget that. You know what? It was to put on 5 Live for the football or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, 837 was the frequency. But essentially, I was on a media studies school trip when I was 16, and it was to the BBC Television Centre in White City. And like I said, I already started listening to the Asian Network. And when I was in the lobby of the BBC there with my school group, one thing I never lacked was confidence. So when I was there in this lobby with my school tour group, I spotted a presenter that I recognized from the Asian Network. Now, the truth is, I didn't know their actual name. I knew they were either called Raj or called Pablo, and I didn't know which one it was. But I knew that I had listened to their show, and I knew that I would recognize their voice. So I just shouted out, and I think we were all on a mission on this school trip to try and spot somebody that we
Yeah.
had knew. So I just shouted out, Raj, Pablo, and this man responded, and it happened to be Raj. And I think I just went into like autopilot mode and was like, "Oh, I love your show. I love Bollywood. I love watching movies, etc., etc." And I think to get me off his back at that time, he just said, "You should come on and review a movie for us." I didn't think he actually meant it, but he
Yeah.
did. Like he very kindly after that went and spoke to his producer and gave them my number. And a few days later, I did get a call saying, "Oh, we know you met Raj. Would you like to come in and review a movie?" Now, reviewing a movie at that time was just it was just it was like on a volunteering basis. Like it was just
Yeah.
for fun. It wasn't anything regular. They used to get different people in every week. But me being me, once I got in, I kind of just started talking to the producer and was like, are there any work experience opportunities? Is there any internship opportunities? I just kind of I wanted to explore more of this, I guess.
I think that's a really good example to give, especially to kind of the younger gen or people with kids mainly, of setting that example of, once you've kind of taken that chunk and you get your foot in the door, it's about the persistence, it's about consistency.
Yeah,
That even if you're doing it, that you're showcasing your skills as much as you can in order to. I think visualization, being more less visualization, but a strategy of trying to get to where you are, and like your determination of like, okay, we can't get rid of this kid anyway, but okay, let's have a look at what he's doing. Is it good? Is
yeah,
it actually professional? Is it from a is there real skill in what he's actually reviewing? Um, and then so like from that you've progressed it through. But what made you different to some of the other people who were doing it? What do you think, apart from being annoying or whatever? I'm just giving an example there. I don't mean that. But
sorry.
what made you?
I probably was, to be
No,
honest. But
but
yeah.
what made you different to everybody else then?
Um, I think I wasn't asking for these opportunities for the glory of being in the BBC or being connected to Bollywood or any of that. I genuinely was passionate about this. Like up until that point, all my GCSE media studies coursework had been about Bollywood. I'd written essays on, I remember around that time, Wake Up Sid had released starring Ranveer Kapoor. I remember writing a whole essay on that for one of my media studies courseworks. I remember Shilpa Shetty had just won Big Brother. I remember like creating like a whole um,
Well, there's the
uh,
racism around then as well, isn't it? So
it was around that time, yeah. But I remember like my media studies GCSE coursework being like some reality show that I was pitching, starring Shilpa Shetty. The point is, this was my world. I was consumed by it. I was passionate about it. I knew it instinctively, and it kind of just was all up in my head anyway, right? So when I was coming in and doing these film reviews, which started off as being like once every couple of months for free with no kind of payment, I would just kind of show off my knowledge, you could say, or show off
yeah,
my enthusiasm. And also, like now it's a little bit different. I think post COVID, everyone's become a lot lazier and actually going out and doing things and meeting people. But back then, I was getting my dad or my mum were very kindly driving me down to London to come and do this with no money involved at all, just for the pure passion of it. And that's quite a task after
that's
doing
massive.
it a couple of times. So for them to carry on doing that, I think even the producers on the show were like, oh, this guy does genuinely really want to do this, or does really want to explore this. And even at that time, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I think in the back of my head, I still wanted to be a film director. I was applying to university at that time as well to do English and film studies courses. So um, I just wanted to explore what would happen if I continued pursuing this.
And you went to Westminster, right? Is that what
No,
you?
I went to Queen Mary.
Queen Mary's, yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
is that what you studied in eventually, or?
Yeah, so I did English and film eventually, but look, university was the best time of my life, genuinely the best time of my life. Made the best friends there, had a great time. But I think the actual academics of university was the thing I focused on least because I'd already started working at the BBC by that time. I was already working at the Asian Network. I was actually working at the Asian Network as a freelancer before I started uni. So by the time I actually started uni, I was kind of fitting that around working at the same time, which is
Yeah.
not good. I don't advise that. I advise people focus on university and then work alongside that.
So 16, 17, kind of volunteering, working,
Yeah.
like doing all that, and then getting your foot in the door.
So when I was 17 is when I first got like a proper opportunity to work, which was essentially the editor of that show at the time, who actually works at the Asian Network now as well. His name's Zab. He called me down to London for a meeting and was like, "Look, you've been pursuing this for a while now. You come down and do regular film reviews. You've sent me your CV. What do you want?" And I was a little bit taken aback because I was like, well, I don't actually know what I want. I just want to see what I can do with this opportunity, and I want to work on this show in some form, and I love Bollywood, etc., etc. And he was like, well, then prove it by coming down on a weekly basis and doing some paid work for us and going to cinemas around London and gathering people's film reviews when they've watched movies. Essentially, what are known as Vox Pops. Go and get Vox Pops of people who have watched film releases, edit them together, we'll play them out on the radio. That's a good starting point, and also one of the biggest skills that you can learn when it comes to radio production. Started doing that regularly. I think at that point somebody went off sick on the team, and they were like, "Oh, do you actually want to come and work on the production of the team instead of production of the show instead?" So that's how it kind of happened. It all kind of like followed step by step, I would say.
You know, when you're going into kind of an environment in the BBC, like you mentioned Raj and Pablo, I think they were two big characters who were from. I always used to know it because they used to sign off to another program that I used to listen. I don't know whether the Banglas, like the Banglas.
Dips' show.
Yeah, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So I used to catch kind of the segue, you know, over that
Yeah.
bit. Like you've got a lot of big characters who were involved in the at radio at that time. You were in a building full of characters in the whole BBC and stuff.
Yeah.
How did you kind of find your place in there and dealing with some of the personalities, especially at a young age? Because you would have been one of the youngest there, right?
Yeah.
Or...
Yeah. I think I was the youngest there. How did I adapt to working with these big personalities? The truth is, I didn't know any better. Like, I didn't know any better. This was my first kind of real professional working environment. Whatever I was seeing, whatever behavior of presenters I was seeing, I was accepting as the norm of being how presenters behave, or how things are done, or how this world works. And now as a more mature adult, I probably have different opinions on that. But at the time, I accepted and embraced it for what it was, because I was so grateful for the opportunity of being in this building. I was willing to do everything. I was willing to make cups of tea. I was willing to go and buy breakfast for the presenters. I was willing to do whatever it required for me to prove that I deserve to be there, is what I was willing to do. Now, I think that young interns or people on work placements are so much luckier because the infrastructure is so much better. There is a much tighter structure or plan of what you will do if you come in at that beginner entry level. You're not doing tea runs anymore. You're not going to buy breakfast for the presenters. Those things don't exist now. Me as a presenter now, I would not dream of asking my team to do those things for me. But that's because the culture has changed a lot in those years as well. So when you say, how did I kind of adapt to that environment with these big personalities, I was just this young kid who was like wide-eyed and bushy-tailed and just taking it all in and absorbing it all and seeing these personalities. You know, at that time, it was we used to be in a building called Yolding House, and Radio One and One Extra also used to broadcast from that building. So you used to have like Vernon Kay on a Saturday morning at the same time as Raj and Pablo's show, and they used to have all these big guests in. I remember like the Saturdays being in on one show, or JLS being in on one show, like very early on in my career. So all I'm doing is just absorbing what's going on. I
I wouldn't
remember
get
like,
any work done if I saw some of the. I'll be like, it's just like this constantly.
yeah, yeah, it really was like it was a wild experience. But everybody, once you're in the doors of the building, I don't think there's really a hierarchy that exists inside. Like every presenter was quite approachable. You could have a conversation with people. You could introduce yourselves. I never felt like I, you know, I couldn't speak to someone in that environment. So
Yeah.
no, it was a great experience.
I had a very brief stint on radio when I used to be as a more of a kind of CD selector when I used to work on Excel during Radio Excel when I used to do when I was at university. I was able to kind of plug some gigs and I used to get free tickets because of it.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
And there was a couple of things that always came out. It was like all the biggest Bangla stars that I would like be that I would see. I would like if people actually knew these people, they're horrible people. You know, like so, never meet some of your heroes. Some of them are absolutely great. But I was never a massive Bollywood fan. So I remember meeting Shah Rukh Khan once
Wow.
and Ash Warrior, right? I think it was just around the times of Mega Mela.
Right.
And you know, to me, it wasn't a huge like to me, it wasn't like I wasn't kind of starstruck at that bit. I was more like, oh, how you doing? And because I was kind of acting normal, I think they kind of they draw to you a little bit more.
Yeah.
Whereas if somebody was kind of starstruck, they're trying like, oh, that's great at that, but like you're freaking me out. I need to kind of move in a
Yeah.
little bit. That kind of etiquette, who taught you that? Because that's what I think is missing. Do you get what I'm saying? Or am
That's
I?
such a great question. Okay. So when I was 17, 18, um, I was definitely starstruck. To some extent, I was definitely starstruck. And I remember asking for this opportunity to come in and be the runner on a day where Kareena Kapoor was coming into the studio. She was promoting a film called We Are Family. I think it was 2009 was the year, and I was interning at the time, but I wasn't supposed to be in the building on a or I think it was a Sunday. I can't remember, or Monday. Monday. I wasn't supposed to be in the building. Monday and Tuesday were supposed to be my days off, but I remember like literally begging for, can I come in and can I be a runner on this day because I want to meet Kareena Kapoor. And it was great. Like it was great to see a celebrity up close and personal like that. And I guess I wanted to be their friend, right? Because I've dreamt of meeting these people. I've watched them on screen, and I must have come on like too much like a fanboy at that point and too starstruck because she gave me no time at all. Like she was lovely, like really, really nice. No complaints. She wasn't rude or she wasn't. There was nothing bad, but she also didn't want to engage in a lot of conversation. And in my head, I fast forward to January 2020, where I'm much more established in my profession, and I go to her house in Mumbai, and I'm acting way more professional. Like I'm acting way more calm. I'm not looking to engage in casual banter because I'm there doing my job as an interviewer. She's there doing her job as a celebrity to be interviewed. And yet she was so much more engaging in conversation. And I think that was all in my behavior. Like the fact that I wasn't desperate to uh engage in friendly banter. I wasn't coming across as starstruck. I think those that etiquette you learn over time in the job. I think the more relaxed you become in the job, the easier those relationships become with these celebrities. The more like now at this point, I am not phased at all by doing a celebrity interview. I can't remember the last time I did an interview where I was phased by the person that I was going to speak to, but that has come through many years of doing this and experiencing good and bad interviews and good and bad celebrities to realize essentially this is just a job. It is just a job. Like interviewing famous people, they might be famous, but at the end of the day, they are just as messed up as anybody else. That's the truth of it.
Is it? Yeah. So you know, that teaching of that etiquette, I think, needs to be expressed a little bit more.
Tell me more. Tell me what you mean. Tell me what you mean.
So, what I think. So the only I this, like I said, I'm a massive Jazzy B fan, right?
Yeah.
So the first time I was working at a wedding, I was doing photography at a wedding, just during uni, and the first time I ever saw Jazzy B perform was the only time I stopped still and watched the performer, and I was like, I missed the whole wedding. I got bollocking after, and I was like, I'm amazed. So when the first time I kind of met him, I was like, holy shit. Because I think people forget how big these people were.
Yeah.
Like, you know, at their peak, like they were massive. And he was like stopping traffic to launch parties on Star Road and all these kind of things. And so I met him. I had him at my wedding. You
Oh
know,
wow.
and you know, and it was a similar kind of thing from it. Then I eased off, and then I was kind of involved in another kind of musical project with him. And I felt like I was I spoke to quite a lot of celebs and stuff for that bit, but he was just the one that I always just fell down at. Like I was like, I'm all right with everybody, and then sometimes I'm like, I feel back like that kid again, and I'm almost short circuit that out now because um I think I've just got to that much. You know, when you become, I think when you become a parent and things, and you're trying to teach those things, and that you spot your own mistakes of what you've done.
Yeah.
So acting like the fanboy, or going a bit over the top, and having that, what I see is other people who don't care as much as of him like I do.
Yeah.
You just see that they've got a better relationship because they're not a fanboy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. I think, it comes with time, like I said, but
Yeah, yeah,
also
yeah, yeah.
it comes with a lot of like knowing your worth. Like, what are you bringing to this dynamic?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Why have you as an individual been allowed into that close proximity with this famous person? You are providing a service to them. Like for me, I think of it as a very transactional relationship now. So
Mm,
I know that these celebrities, they need platforms to promote themselves and get out to potential audiences, right? I know that I am good at my job and I will give them a fair chance at expressing themselves on my platform. And so I don't feel um I feel grateful that they come to me, but I don't feel indebted to them for coming to me. I don't feel like, oh, like thank God you've come to me instead of somebody else, because deep down I also know that they need the platform and they need the kind of fairness of that platform as well. And that's kind of how I see it now. So you and you reach a point where if you feel like those celebrities aren't giving you the respect that you deserve, you automatically feel less starstruck by them anyway.
mm.
Like it's just kind of an ever evolving relationship, I think. Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the way I treat it now. I treat it as quite a transactional relationship. You want to promote something, so you're coming to me. I'll do a fair job of giving you that platform.
Yeah.
Let's go.
But I mean, whenever I spent time with him, being around his place, like he's fantastic. He settles you down, and you're fine, and you get out of that initial stage. I think what I experienced at radio and seeing some other people was how they kind of manipulated that, and that vulnerability of being manipulated, where somebody's got your best interest, and how they kind of take advantage of. I think that was the biggest kind of takeaway from it. Is there is there a still now? I know what you've just said, and I know that's 100% genuine, and I agree because I feel it, from that way as well. Is there still an art, like an actor or actress that you still feel like a kid again when they're in there, and you have to kind of check yourself out?
I think Shah Rukh Khan will always be that kind of figure for me because he was my childhood hero. However, having said that, I remember the first time meeting Shah Rukh properly, face to face, was in 2011. I think it was 2011 or 2012. 2012 it might have been, and I remember fanboying in that
Mm.
interaction. But since then, I've met him a number of times, and it's got to the point where I don't feel like that because he's made the relationship a lot easier. Like uh, he is a vulnerable actor who is going through his own struggles in life, who is constantly being berated by the media, who is constantly under scrutiny. He is not that kind of bulletproof hero that I thought he was as a kid. And so when you realize that as an individual, he is somebody who's going through his own kind of journey, it does take off the shine of that fanboy a little bit. Like it takes off that starstruck element a little bit. I see him as somebody who I respect enormously, who's always shown me respect as a journalist, and somebody who I very much wish the best for and hope he succeeds in every manner possible. But am I a fanboy in the same manner? Probably
Yeah,
not.
yeah, yeah. I think we need to change that word, fanboy, in it. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll start that camp. Just wanted to ask you, like, sometimes when I do this, some of the best stuff that I get is off camera.
Yeah.
It's normally when it's ended. How do you make that conscious decision where you know you've got a piece of information that they've told you off camera that would be the biggest headlines, it will do wonders for your career, all these kind of things? How do you make that decision of what to release and what not to?
Oh, okay. Well, if it's, I wouldn't release something if it's been said off record. If it's off record and we haven't started rolling properly and it's just in the rushes.
But
I w-
in today's day and age, nothing's off. Everyone's got smartphones. Everyone's got this. Okay, let's put it this way: you'll be probably one of the rare ones that wouldn't exploit that. We all full
Do you
well
know?
know it.
Honestly, truthfully, I wouldn't.
I
Truthfully,
know you wouldn't. I know that's what I
yeah,
said.
yeah,
I know you're one of the
uh,
rare ones, but
uh,
you see people, the TMZ culture of
yeah.
releasing and the gossip and all that kind of stuff. But how do you make that decision? Yeah, yeah, sorry.
I make that decision based on the fact that if I want to maintain a relationship of respect and kind of mutual respect, and I don't want to jeopardize a relationship that I have with these individuals, then I wouldn't compromise that trust because there's trust there. Like I know that when and you're right, there's many a conversations that happen off record or when the camera's not on where um somebody is saying something that they wouldn't say if the cameras were rolling. So they've confided in me or said something in a space of trust. I don't think it's my place to go and expose that if they're not willing to say it on record. Also, it comes under the fact that I work for a brand where there is a level of respect and trust
Mm.
associated as well, right? Like uh, I'm not delusional to the fact that I have access to these celebrities because I work for an organization like the BBC. I completely understand that they come to me because I'm associated with a brand or an organization that stands for a certain
And
quality
it's
of
that
service.
transaction, isn't it? It's that transaction.
Yeah, so why would I jeopardize that? Why would I want to ruin the chances of sitting down with that person again, where they might feel more comfortable talking about that subject in an open space? That's not to say that I shy away from topics. Like as a journalist, I'll talk about whatever is topical at that time.
Yeah.
I'll ask the questions that are relevant at that time. Um, I won't though go into spaces that I think are going to cause more damage than good.
Yeah, the only reason I bring it up because like Shah Rukh Khan, I'm not the biggest Bollywood fan, but I
Yeah,
kind of still kind of know little bits about it from a more musical aspect. But with him, I mean, he's had eventful, let's say 18 months. Well, his
yeah,
family's had a eventful sort of 18 months, 2 years. And also from an acting point of view, like this new film, I don't even know what it's called, but I
Pathaan.
know, yeah, that's it, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That it's a really pivotal point in terms of career that he's coming back from after a long time, and yeah, I just saw his physique was just unbelievable, right?
yeah,
Like how much he kind of signifies of where he's changed. We kind of grew up with him. I'm 10 years older than you, roughly, and you kind of grow up with these guys and you see where they are and how they're reinventing themselves and that. Do you think that they get to a position where the media kind of starts backing off, the narrative has changed from being kind of loving, where they make those conscious decisions of what to do next?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the media's ruined their relationship with somebody like Shah Rukh Khan. You know, like for example, Shah Rukh Khan hasn't done any interviews for this film Pathaan. Not a single press interview has he done for this movie. He's gone on sports shows, like he was at the FIFA
World Cup,
World
done
Cup
it? Yeah.
fight. Yeah, so he was there, and he did a couple of other, like I think he did uh, the Dubai. There was like a cricket ceremony in Dubai that he went to, and he made an appearance there. But in terms of press interviews with journalists, he's done none. And he just tweeted the other day saying, "I've got nothing to say, so I won't do any interviews." Now, this guy was the most media friendly actor you could think of. He would always have something to say to the press, and the reason for that is because the press has jeopardized that relationship. They've compromised that relationship. They've gone out their way to slander him in many ways over the last couple of years on social media, through articles, through associations with his family. And so I think that at this point, celebrity culture as a whole is reevaluating their relationship with the media. They're reevaluating whether Amitabh Bachchan, another great example of somebody who refuses to do press interviews now. Again, somebody who was very media friendly until a few years ago. So I think if the media isn't careful, they will ruin those relationships forever. You know, we're in a very interesting place right now where celebrities, to a large extent, are realizing they don't need the media as much as they used to. They have their own social media platforms with a reach of millions. Pathaan is a great example of a film that has had um, a massive publicity campaign, but zero promotional campaign. Like the stars of the film have not done any public appearances, no interviews, and yet everybody knows this film's releasing.
Yeah, for me to know it,
Yeah,
I can, it's not my active channels of kind of on my timeline of consumption. So, with that being said, do you fear for your kind of own access to these kind of guys? Because like in certain countries, the press culture is kind of is vulture like. You know what I mean?
yeah,
The paparazzi work and stuff from there, and you can see, especially in other countries, that the news cycles are 24/7. Little snippets. The content is king, isn't it? Right?
yeah.
Where you're kind of swimming against the grain, where you're still trying to maintain the high BBC professional standards, your own kind of ethics within there. You stand out more. But do you think because of their blanket approach that they're not doing any press, that it can affect you?
It could do potentially. I mean, it's definitely a thought that has run through my mind, and Baton has been a film that has reinforced that thought in my mind, where I'm like, oh, is this going to be the future? Is this going to harm my prospects or my show or my work? Having said that, you do get to a point where you built enough of that relationship where if you drop their publicist a message or you drop their team a message and you say, look, it's me who wants to do this interview, I think that I've built enough goodwill in that industry to be able to still maintain those equations. But we'll have to see. You know, if you ask me in a year's time, it'll be
I
very
know. I
interesting.
will. I can't. For the follow-up one, I can't wait
Yeah,
because it'll be so different, and especially with this point, which is how the balance with your own style and your technique in terms of how deep do you go in asking one of the questions within there? Do you compromise future, or do you even though it might be a sensible question, um, is that the kind of straw that breaks the the camel's
yeah.
back for that?
And also, like, the role of a journalist has changed so much as well. Like earlier, as a journalist, your job was literally to ask questions that were um, questions that people wanted to know, questions that were going to bring out the truth of a certain situation. And now there is a compromise that a lot of entertainment journalists make where they won't go into certain areas, they won't ask about certain topics. Um, and part of that is because of the welfare or the care of the celebrity that they're talking about, right? Like I would say 10 years ago, the number of journalists asking celebrities about their relationships was far greater than it is now because celebrities themselves have set boundaries and said, this is an area we don't want to talk about. It's bad for our mental health to talk about this because if tomorrow that relationship fails, this will always be on record, right? So as journalists, you or certainly as entertainment journalists, you're making a more calculated risk of whether it's worth asking the question or not. Could this question backfire on you later down the line? Will you lose anything in your interview by not asking this question? So you are constantly kind of making those kind of, I guess, assessments in your head.
And so, in terms of like um your experience then, how do you formulate a good interview from your experience?
Okay, so I think like research is imperative. Like I cannot stress enough how important it is to research the person that you are interviewing. I have watched so many bad interviews where actually the journalist is quite talented, the celebrity is a great talker, but because the journalist hasn't done their research, the interview just kind of falls flat. So know who you're talking to and then know the audience that you're catering for as well. Like me doing an interview for the BBC Asian Network is very different to me doing an interview for I don't know, TMZ, for example, you mentioned earlier, right? The
Mm.
style, the questioning, the line of questioning, the tone is going to be very specific to the outlet that you're providing that material for. I also think like not I think most celebrities do interviews when they're promoting something. They're promoting a film, or they're promoting a song, or promoting something. So imagine they will have done 20 to 30 interviews promoting the same thing, and those answers are on autopilot. Like those answers are the same generic answers that they're going to give every single journalist. So you need to come to the table with something different. You need to come with questions that are outside of the box. You need to come with something that is going to force that celebrity to think about their answer, but also give you new material that you can run on your platform that nobody else will have. And so that comes from consuming a lot of other interviews. So my tips: do your research, know the platform that you're writing for, but also watch every single other interview that's out there. Like literally watch every interviewer's techniques, their style, how they ask questions, what sorts of questions they ask, not to rip them off, because that's not what you're trying to do, but to try and build a good evaluation yourself of what works, what doesn't, what kind of questions a celebrity particularly responds well to, what they don't respond well to, um, and then find ways to innovate yourself. That would be my kind of advice.
I mean, you talked about innovation of yourself. So a Haroon that I would have seen 5 years ago visually would be completely different to what the one that you see now. How important is something like that to keep keep you kind of present, still be part of a subject matter of a discussion and being relevant?
Do you mean physically? Physically,
Yeah,
you're
I
saying?
think physically, obviously, like you're now a TikTok star, innit? Doing all your dance moves and stuff and that, from there. But like, was that kind of a pressure that you were feeling?
Um, I would say it was an unsaid pressure. It was an unspoken pressure that I was feeling. Nobody really explicitly nobody really explicitly labeled it as a pressure, but I, as an individual, felt like I didn't look like the best version of myself 5 years ago. And I felt like that added an extra layer of things I needed to worry about when I didn't
Mm,
really need to worry about them. So, like, for example, this is a good one. When I was doing interviews 5 years ago, apart from making sure that the camera and the lighting and the everything was right for the interviewee, I also was really worried about how I would look on camera, because I knew that I was overweight. I knew that I wasn't comfortable with the way I was looking. So I'd be paranoid about all of those things. Now I'm a lot easier in front of the camera because I know that I look like a better version of myself, or what I consider to be a better version of myself. So it kind of it takes off a stress. It takes off one stress
yeah.
from the table. I guess it's one less thing that you have to worry about. Although my beard looks a bit crazy right now, but
Well, that's
that's
all
a
right. Look,
that's
man,
just
look, I just constantly look like I'm not sleeping very well at the moment. So,
why aren't you sleeping well, Ricky? Let me interview you a little bit. Why aren't you sleeping well?
I've got this sleep app, the sleep apps that you can get. So it,
Yeah,
it determines like I'm getting like 7 hours, 8 hours, like 7.5 hours or six or whatever, right?
yeah.
But my REM sleep is like 20,
Okay, so that's when you're in
13.
actual deep sleep.
Yeah. And I can't physically do anything different to that. I'm going to the gym. I'm playing football. I'm a natural worrier anyway, and I think the line of work that I do in my day job is but I've reduced stresses down. I'm decompressed. All these things, I just cannot get my REM sleep up. I think the highest I've got in the last, say, couple of months was about 52 minutes. I think it was.
Really? Okay.
And
And what's the average for most
the
people?
recommendation is a minimum of 90 minutes.
Okay. So what could be causing that?
No idea.
And what have you done to change the setting around when you go to sleep to kind of
Go to
increase?
sleep earlier, much earlier.
Are you taking
Not watching.
supplements?
I haven't, to be fair, I haven't taken a lot of supplements from it. I didn't want to build a dependency on, let's say, medication.
Yeah.
But if I like even like vitamins and all that, I haven't been doing it. I've tried to keep it as natural I can to kind of identify the issue.
Yeah.
But it could be something that I've always had and didn't know anything different from it. But I have no. It's like when I turn 40, and I keep always going on about it. It was like a switch in the body. It's like it automatically just the power just went down.
Yeah.
You just like. So I'll go to the gym. I feel the strongest that I've ever been.
Yeah.
So I'm more from that side. But I just need the recovery time a bit more. So I'd like especially your journey around weight loss. I kind of relate to that a little bit. And I get it. It's like an extra layer of stress that you don't need to do. So
Yeah.
I feel great. I don't even go on the scales because I know I feel great.
Yeah.
But it's not corresponding in my sleep.
So try it. Well, I mean, look, who am I to give you
No,
advice?
no,
But
this is a
however,
discussion.
I'm very fascinated by things like this because I think when I turned 30, I had a switch of a different kind, but where I realized that these are aspects of my life that I also need to prioritize, and like sleep was one of them. But like these are pillow mists that you get with lavender in them, they're really good to like help calm you down to be in a better place to sleep. I light a candle like an hour before I'm going to sleep. I light a candle that has like, I mean, the one that I've got at the moment has got like rose oud in it, but I like
Okay.
calming kind of scents at that
I'm writing
time.
this down, by the way.
Yeah,
Look, I'll
pillow
show you.
mist.
Look, you were talking about research, and this was not the research that I had for you.
What
Uh,
does it say? Shah Rukh, school, and
Early journey.
early journey. Nice.
So anyone from there, I'm a word like I just
So you knew that I was going to talk about Shah Rukh.
I was gonna bring it up in terms of my own opinion around the kind of consumption around it and how you would the fanboy bit about how did you deal
Okay.
with presence and that. But I think if I'm a betting person, I would have guessed that you would have mentioned his name in the interview.
It's very interesting. Okay, so I would say this pillow mist that you get, which has
I wrote down candle. I'm writing down
candle. Yeah,
pillow.
but also the scent of the candle, very important. Like you need like something with lavender or chamomile or some sort of like calming, soothing scent. I started taking ashwagandha as well about 2 hours before I go to sleep, as a supplement. I
As what?
agree,
Ashwa?
ashwagandha,
I have to
which is
find some of the
it's like a
LVs.
natural herbal supplement. Um, I take that every night before I go to like a couple of hours before I go to sleep. It's supposed to just make you more relaxed so that by the time you do go to bed, you're in a better state to go to sleep. Um, they're the things that I'm actively doing, but even I know that I could do a lot more to improve my
Yeah,
sleep. Like I still use my screen or my phone or watch TV before I go to sleep. Like that I shouldn't really do.
yeah. I do. Yeah, even if I do, I have it on the that kills
Oh
the
yeah, yeah,
light kind of setting
yeah.
stuff and that within there. Um, yeah, yeah. I see, you're very clever. You spun it around on me.
Oh, there's one more thing actually. I no, genuinely, I like giving off this advice. There's this thing that you get from Lush, the shop Lush, which is like a sleep balm, and it's got lavender in it, and you kind of put it on your pulse points before you go to sleep. So on your neck, on your wrist, it also helps you sleep better.
Oh, what's it now? Okay, right. I'm coming to the last few questions on this. So these are the deeper ones in there.
Okay.
How do you how do you balance your work life, private life? And are you conscious of that because you know that you are speaking about your day-to-day job is of people's kind of private lives as well?
Yeah. How do I balance it? Not as well as I could is the
Mm.
is the truthful answer. I think I'm a kind of like um I focus on one thing at a time as an individual. So when I'm focused on my job and my career, I give that my like 200%, and that's everything. I give my all to it, and then I feel like my private life or my personal life suffers for that. However, I think COVID and the lockdown taught us all to balance that a little bit better. So now, for example, you mentioned the gym. If I know I'm going to go to the gym at a certain time, unless I've got a really urgent meeting, I will move things around to make sure I facilitate that time for myself. If I know I've made a commitment with my friends or my family, I will make sure that I won't double book that with work commitments on the same night to give that the respect that it requires as well. Because if you don't have those other components to your life, your personal life, your me time, all those things, I don't think you can be the best
Yeah.
at your job as well. So I think my whole balance around balancing work life and personal life has shifted.
And when you do find that balance within, do you feel the quality of your work gets better, or do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, because like sometimes when you have I would say sometimes I've produced some of my best stuff when I've struggled with sleep or anything like that, or I've done it from because you're digging in your creative innovation and stuff like that. And where sometimes if you have a little bit too much, I'm really much more groggy. Do you take that in consideration, or is it just not a thing for you?
I mean, it happens. Like certainly when I have done, so I've done quite a lot of like international trips for work to
Yeah.
Mumbai, to Dubai, to Pakistan, and when you're on those trips, you barely get any sleep. Like you sleep 3 to 4 hours a night at most, and then you're back in the morning doing interviews again back to back, and you ride on the adrenaline of it. You really do. Like you're riding on the kind of pure excitement of what's going on, and those interviews turn out good as well.
Mm.
However, having said that, I do think there's a lot of value in being kind of well slept, or being well rested before doing an interview, having that extra time to prepare. I think there's a lot of value in that. Having said that, do I think my work is better for giving time to my personal life? Yes, I do, because I think you can hear on radio when somebody is burnt out, or when they're out of energy, or they're exhausted. I think it comes through
Mm.
very easily through your voice. So if I don't allow myself time to kind of replenish myself, or to kind of um, rest, I think it does affect my work on the radio for sure.
Okay, so they're kind of coming to a close in a second, but this is kind of the last one before I kind of hand it over to yourself in one way. Don't panic. In in your line of work, you've experienced it for probably coming up to 15 years, I would say.
Yeah, a little
What
bit less, but yeah, I'm not that old, but yeah.
I'm counting your school trip, so
Yeah,
that's fine.
yeah, then maybe, yeah.
Yeah. So would what do you fear? What are your fears for the future of kind of radio, and what's your kind of shining lights to think that it's going to be okay? The reason why I say it's going to be okay is because I'm only going off from my immediate circle, and I'm conscious I'm not the demographic of as well. But the I listen when I'm in a car. I listen to put on a YouTube video
Yeah.
with kind of like listening to clips and doing stuff, or podcasts. Very rarely do I kind of actually put on a radio station. That do you what's your thoughts on that?
So I think it is a very real worry for everybody who works in the radio industry about the relevance of radio in 10 or 20 years time. However, I think that radio provides everybody with a sense of community that they don't get elsewhere. I think that even now, the reason why live television viewing works is because people feel like they are tuned into something at the same time, and everybody's watching something collectively. And in the same way, I think radio provides you that security of knowing that you're not alone. Like there are other people out there who are listening or consuming something at the same time as you. So actually, the concern for me as a broadcaster, as a presenter, is creating that community, creating that environment where people feel like they are represented, like they are included, like they can relate to what I'm talking about at the same time. For me, the kind of main priority is being relevant with what I'm talking about on the radio, being relevant with what I'm playing on the radio as well. I don't want somebody to feel like I'm playing music that is not of their taste, or or they could make a better Spotify playlist themselves. I don't want them to feel that way. I want them to feel like they are part of a collective journey. And I think that is going to be the kind of main mission for most people in radio over the next 10, 15 years.
Okay, thank you for that. It's something that I'm just conscious of my own.
What do you think? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this.
I think radio's going to die.
Oh, okay. Thanks a lot, man. So you're saying I'm going to be out of a job in a few years?
No, I don't. I know, because I can see what you do and what your skill is very transferable. I think, and you're able to have a conversation. I think what I see across radio stations is that I think the art of conversation has died. So you have a 2-3 minute sort of, oh yeah, I watched TV last night, and it's like it's so pre-planned. It's like wrestling. It's not, it's so scripted. And then the get out of jail card is to play a song, or let's play two because I can't be bothered to do any talking. I think there's a reason why podcasts are doing so well, is because it's the art of conversation. It's a bit like Nihal's book, actually, where it's actually learning that skill again, having space to disagree, or listen to ad-free kind of narrative, and you're able to have a deeper discussion with. And I think that's why motivational things are working. This is why everything is like that. It's just telling you this is what happens. However, I was at a PRS AGM last year, and they were talking about actually, I think it was actually the BBC the controller director, I forgot what her name was, and she was talking about actually radio figures have actually gone up.
Yeah.
So the data might be saying one thing, but my own personal kind of preference is different. Now, whether there's a lag from that because of COVID, I don't know. I think we'll know that answer naturally within 2 to 3 years. But if you look at revenues and people and stars and personalities will go where the money is, podcasting and everything is kind of the future. But yeah, I mean, that's my personal thought of it. I think what does worry me is about those songs and things that people are producing are getting shorter. I think people's attention spans in content are like a minute or 2 minute songs, because they're making content not for the listener, they're making content for an algorithm. And I think that relationship, and therefore you become against the grain when you don't take that in consideration. The reason why Joe Rogan and all these guys, in my opinion, did well was because they didn't conform to what was being already out there. They just did a space and like, I'm just going to talk, and whoever likes it likes it. Yeah. And there is a bit of freedom in that. Like, I do this on my own agenda. I don't need to ask any permission. I do this, and it's just because I'm intrigued and I want to know. And if people enjoy it and they follow it and stuff, hopefully they enjoy it as well at the same time. But I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for like who I want to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where I think if you've got kind of a paying audience, that pressure of trying to continuously please them and an algorithm is so difficult, and it's going to get harder as you go forward.
Yeah, I mean, you always have people who say, "Oh, you don't talk enough on the radio," but then there's a lot of people who say you talk too much on the radio as well.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
There's more people who say you talk too much on the radio. Talk less, play more music. So I think it is very hard to really find the right balance. I think it's something that radio stations across the world are struggling with, is trying to find that balance right now. But thanks for telling me I'm going to be out of a job in 2-3 years.
No, I don't. No, I actually genuinely don't think so. Because like, and this is a bit of a guilty pleasure out of this bit, was when I'm on TikTok, I've become an addict on that now. I will fully admit. I always get drawn to some of the Bollywood stuff. So there's a guy on there who gets a tape.
Yeah,
I don't know what his name is. Whatever, he gets a tape. Someone said this one.
Dobbywood, I think.
Then he gets it out and he reads the inlay and he goes,
great.
This was the backstory of it all. And then he gets this bush bloody tape player, presses
Yeah.
play, and then you listen to it. So I I just fall into the kind of the narrative, the story behind it, not necessarily the music, but the story behind it. And a lot of your kind of like the Bollywood, they're stories. It's like
Yeah.
people can know about a film, but not actually watch it. Like I've got no, I wouldn't watch Pathaan. Like it's just not on my radar. But I'm interested in the dynamics behind it and the story. So therefore, you always have content. I think there's other people that wouldn't, and you probably be bigger exposure because they'll be tuning into your personality wherever you go. I think that where that didn't happen as much was with Chris Moyles, where he was at Radio One, and that following didn't necessarily transfer over to kind of Sirius of where or wherever I don't know where he's at actually, and I think that was a bit of a risk. So I ain't saying that you are, but if you are, you're probably one of the more fortunate ones.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing is though, there's no platforms in the UK that provide that Bollywood audience with
Make your own.
make it. Yeah, very true. You know what you're doing is inspiring in many, many ways. You know, you've made your own platform, and I think that you've grown that community. I think the reason you can be yourself and ask whatever you want and not have to have an agenda is because you are doing it yourself, and I think that's a great place to be in.
I would say I'm in the same position as you when you were 16, 17, is where I've got just a passion for podcasts. I like it,
Yeah.
and I listen to people. I'm very honest in that, and I don't have an agenda with it. And it's just like I did it during COVID. I said I'm gonna just get it out there, and it's kind of a legacy because like sometimes if I can't speak to my kids, at least they'll know that there's a digital legacy of this guy. This is what he thought about this. This is what he thought about. Anyway, that's getting too deep. Last question. So this is the bandwagon. So it's a play on my surname, and it's an opportunity for the guest to either jump on a bandwagon or jump off a bandwagon, or if not, is there anything that they want to get off their chest? This is the safe space for you to kind of share.
Nice. Okay, so I want to jump on the bandwagon. I'm trying to get on the bandwagon already, but I want to jump on it completely. And you've already mentioned it, and it is TikTok
Yeah.
because so I find it fascinating, right? Because I have grown up with social media. I'm part of this generation that has been part of the innovation of social media, right from High Five to MySpace to Twitter to Instagram to now TikTok. And I have adapted to every single one of those platforms with a lot of ease. And I find TikTok to be the one that I struggle understanding the most. I love it. I'm addicted to it. I use it every day. I reshare my content from my show on there as well. But actually creating original content for TikTok is a real art. And I don't understand the algorithm well enough to know what I need to create. I don't know if you feel this way as well, but it's so hard to know what works and what won't on TikTok.
I'm really I'm not lazy because that's not the thing. I just don't understand it enough.
Yeah.
So what I do is like I create I was losing when I create these little snippets.
Yeah.
I create a little, to kind of say, oh, this person's coming up, let them share. And so I put it on. And then what's annoying is sometimes where I've had a guest on and they don't even share their own content, which I'm like,
Right.
what's the fucking point of that?
Yeah.
Right. And then, so that's one issue. But then obviously how they do their tags and how they might have different names on different platforms of tags. So getting that right, getting the hashtags correct, because that plays a massive part on how TikTok, how far it goes, because it's always constantly throwing your content around.
Yeah.
So once
Yeah.
it's in there, it's in. But I think there's something about if it's less than time or somebody views a percentage, either 30 or 50% of what you've produced, it goes higher up in an algorithm ranking.
Right. Okay.
But obviously the more engagement you have, it's better. So what if you notice now, a lot of Instagram videos that are being put on are actually the video created from TikTok because you'll see the handle still put on there.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a very interesting relationship. Where I'm betting for the future is I think YouTube Shorts is going to take over TikTok.
It's so interesting you say that, because little kids, certainly, like I know my little cousins, they're not allowed to have TikTok accounts, but everybody's got YouTube. Everybody's got YouTube on their
Yeah.
TV, on their device, so they're just watching YouTube Shorts, and it's fascinating because that's not even a platform that I've thought about creating for at this point. So you're absolutely right.
But you have to create something that's 60 seconds or less
Right.
for it to go. So you're almost getting double revenue if you're a massive producer.
Yeah.
If you're a massive show, if you're creating, let's say your main show is gonna get, I don't know, X amount of views. You can get the same amount of views for shorts, and you're creating loads of bits of them. But that goes against what I want to do, which is long
Long
form.
format.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so like I don't make enough. I make 2 or 3 clips of per podcast, but I do like a minute or 2 minute because I want to know the bloody story. I don't,
Yeah.
I don't want it kind of condensed down in a. But that's not what
But do
audience
you think
want.
that's a generational thing? Because I also think,
Oh
like,
yeah, yeah.
you
I
know,
mean, like,
generate. Yeah.
I mean, the other week, my kids and me and my wife, and my kids, we actually watched Avatar, the first one, which is a 3-hour film.
So long.
And I was more amazed that they watched the film. It was that they stayed there for 3 hours and had captivation. So
Yeah.
which shows me it's still there.
It
But
depends.
yeah, no. But if I give them, if they're watching a video, and I look on their history, every video is about a quarter in
Yeah.
before they move on to the next one. The attention span is so poor in terms of like content. It's just ridiculous. So I think because the sport for so much choice out of there, it really makes a big difference as well. But
Yeah.
it's a whole. If you look at podcasting in itself, right? You look at Stephen Bartlett, all these guys. They've got production. They're TV shows. They're not
Yeah.
podcasts. They're TV shows. So I think as just as much effort goes in, is it the same return of investment? I'm not sure. But the market and the algorithm is going to just determine, who makes it and who doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a very, very interesting time. I also I wonder how many of these podcasts, because everybody's podcast looks good on social media right now, right? Because they've all got, like you said, they're nice visually, they're
Yeah,
presented
yeah,
very,
yeah.
very well. They look like TV shows. I want to know what the actual figures are like for downloads of the episodes, because it'd be interesting to see if the social media success translates into subscribing listeners as well. I'm not sure if it does in
No,
every single
yeah,
case.
I mean it's a bit of a strange one because like Ghana, it made a conscious decision to start doing podcasts in India, and I noticed the first ones that I wrote, and I had Punjabi in the title. So I had the Punjabi Villains on here, so they're a fan group based of South Asian
Yeah.
for Aston Villa. And because they had Punjabi in the title, it just went massive.
Oh
Like
wow.
it
Okay.
just made no sense at all
Yeah.
why it was huge. And because it's just the new emerging market, I think we're like about 2 years behind even mainstream. I think the other thing is like the average episode that people stop from podcasting is episode 70. So I think I'm mid 70s now. So I've
Oh
kind of,
man, does that mean nobody's going to listen to this episode?
no, it's when people, it's when the makers give up.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah. So it's not from the guest point of view.
Yeah.
It's just that like it's one of the common things that people say, bloody hell, you've done a lot. And I'm like, yeah, have you, the effort is ridiculous,
So this is
going there.
this is just the foundation point then, to because if you're saying most people stop at 70, then the ones that exceed that, they're the ones who are kind of really retaining those listeners as well, I'm guessing.
3 to 5 years is when you'll see the first kind of boost that where you go into it from there. But
Wow.
like Joe Rogan was doing it for, I think it was 8 years before he started to. But don't forget, like somebody like him is a real massive anomaly because he was getting TV exposure. He was on the UFC. He was successful in different platforms
Yeah.
before he came over. Somebody like Stephen Bartlett is a really good example from that because there isn't a kind of a UK comparison. But there isn't even a South the South Asian podcasting. So you've got a lot of female podcasters coming. There's a couple of guys who do it as well. There isn't that much, but the return of investment, like I can't buy a house off this. No chance. In fact, it
Yeah.
costs me money.
Yeah.
And that's the true test of the passion, like your parents taking you to your thing,
Yeah.
right? And then that's why, you know, Whereas if you've already built up your personality and you're able to do it, then there is longevity within that, and the production, the quality of your video is going to be a big thing. I get more viewers and stuff, but people who listen on Spotify and all that, I get a lot more feedback from my audio community that comes in.
It's fascinating. It's really, really fascinating. Ricky, thank you so much for
having
me on.
All the best, man. I really appreciate it, and I'm really glad we got this conversation, and thank you.
No, it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it. Sorry it took so long for this to actually happen, but
It's fine, man.
I'm glad it happened at this time, because I feel like it's a really interesting time before my new show starts as well to have this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, man. Cheers.
Take care.